Good morning and welcome to another video from Tim's Tech Blog here at Venom Motorsports. And today we're going to be focusing on the fuel system that we're going to find on our Venom 125cc ATV. So beginning with the fuel, of course we're going to want to put our fuel into the gas tank. And you want to, of course, ensure that the tank itself is nice and clean. There's not a bunch of debris because we don't want any of this dirt going into the fuel. Again, octane 85 is perfectly fine for most of our bikes, unless you're dealing with a very high compression situation. You know, a normal octane level of 85 is just fine. So things to notice here, at the top of the tank, you'll notice that there's a little vent valve area, and typically you might find a piece of plastic tubing extending from that. But again, keep in mind it's just a vent, so it doesn't have to have that. This works perfectly fine. Don't plug the vent up, very important. You must allow atmospheric pressure to flow in, that is atmospheric air pressure to flow in, to ensure that atmospheric pressure acts on the fuel inside the gas tank. If you end up with a situation where you have indeed plugged the gas tank vent, then you're going to have problems with flow and you'll not get enough fuel to the engine. Now looking down a little bit further, you can see along this fuel train the fuel lines, and the next thing we encounter from the tank is the fuel filter. Notice that the fuel filter is nice and clean. The cartridge inside the fuel filter is immaculate. Now again, this is a brand new bike with a brand new fuel cartridge, but this is what you should be looking for. As long as that filter looks nice and clean, you're perfectly fine. When that filter begins to look contaminated, make sure you replace it. Typically for an ATV, I would consider that about every 2 years, because the fuel filter is extremely important. The reason for this is, further on down the line, when the fuel eventually makes it back up into the carburetor has two jets, an idle jet and a high-speed jet. And these have the diameter of basically a small needle. So if they're not clean, they will get plugged up, and then you're going to have problems. Your bike will not idle properly, and it won't accelerate well either. So the key is clean fuel and, of course, a clean filter. A little bit further down the road, we encounter the Petcock. Now the Petcock is extremely important. Very often people will call me, I can't get my bike going. Check the Petcock. If it's in the off position, fuel will not flow through, and of course you're going to have problems. So if you want to start your bike up, make sure that the fuel is on and you're all set. Also check the fuel lines from the Petcock up to the carburetor, because after you leave the Petcock, the fuel line then goes directly up into the carburetor and you're all set to go. You want to make sure that these lines are not kinked. You'll notice, as I mentioned in my blog, that all of these lines use what's referred to as a friction fit. It's a friction fit, and it's just push it on and it's not going to pop off. The friction fit is very tight, and you don't have to have a variety of clamps, etc. Never a bad idea, but you don't have to. Why? Because the system is under a very low pressure, just basically atmospheric pressure, pushing on the fuel, acting on it to move it down to the carburetor. Now, having said all of that, when you're not riding the bike, take the fuel and switch it to the off position. Well, why? Just in case, the float in the carburetor was stuck in the open position. This would allow gas to continuously flow through the carburetor and then leak out through the fuel overflow. Very important then that we shut the gas flow off when we're not riding the bike. Thanks very much for watching this week's blog and, of course, our video. Please subscribe to us on YouTube. We look forward to hearing from you. Have an awesome day.